Hi everyone, my name is Jo. I'm a swing and blues dancer and teacher from Sydney, Australia, and today I'm here to talk about dance shoes. Now obviously you can buy dance shoes, there's some amazing ones on the market. Certainly for an Australian we generally have to order them online and get them shipped, which can actually work out pretty expensive. So I have a whole other video that talks about different types of dance shoes, some of my favourite brands. You can check that out on our YouTube channel. But today I'm going to talk about how you can do it on the cheap. So I'm going to take a regular pair of street shoes and I'm going to turn them into dancing shoes. A couple of ways you can do this. Obviously you can just take them up to your regular shoe fix expert or cobbler or shoe repair person, and they will be able to add a layer of suede onto the bottom of pretty much any pair of shoes for you. In Australia that typically costs about $70, which is, you know, a fairly substantial amount of money. So today I'm going to DIY and it's going to cost me maybe $5. So if you'd like to save some money, come along with me. I'm going to take you through it step by step, show you all the materials and all the tips and tricks, and let's go. Okay, so let's talk about materials. First of all, you need a pair of shoes. I've got a pair of Keds here, and what's great about these is they've got a very smooth, flat sole. There's a little bit of texture, but there's not like any big chunky bits. That works quite well because it means that the leather is going to stick on quite well. I'll give you an example of something that wouldn't work so well. So these shoes, you can see there's quite a big step between the two different layers or levels. This is not going to work great because it's going to be very hard to get the leather to adhere smoothly to this sort of very bumpy texture. So that one's not great. This should work perfectly. Okay, so first of all, we then want to get some rubbing alcohol and a cloth, and we're going to clean the soles of our shoes. I'm just going to put a little bit of that on there and just give them a wipe down. So this makes sure that we've got a nice clean surface to work with. I'll just get a little bit more of that. Fantastic. Okay, so our shoes are now clean and they're ready to go. You can see the other materials I have here is I've got a piece of just any old waste paper to stop the glue from getting onto my table. I've got a cutting mat. If you don't have a cutting mat, you could just find an old piece of cardboard. That'll work really well as well. I've got a scalpel to cut around. If you don't have a scalpel, a pair of sharp scissors will also do the job, but it's a little bit harder to make it a really nice clean finish. You need a pen. You need something to spread your glue with. And then here's the glue. So what I have here is Sally's Kwik Grip. This is sold in a tub at your local hardware store. You can also buy it in much smaller tubes at most supermarkets. So if you're only doing one pair of shoes, you don't need this much. Just one tube will do fine. There are other glues on the market that will also do a good job. There's one called Shoe Fix. There's one called Shoe Glue. But the most important thing is you want something that is going to work. You want a contact adhesive and you want something that is suitable for rubber and leather, because I'm going to be adhering leather onto my rubber shoes. Now the next thing I want to talk about is leather. So I've got an old offcut of leather. This was actually salvaged from an old couch that was getting thrown away because it was literally in pieces. One of my neighbours was throwing it out and it was just going out for hard rubbish collection, so I just went out and cut a little piece away, which I'll be able to get loads of shoes out of a piece this big. Give it a clean. Obviously this had been out in the rain and was pretty scuzzy, so I've given it a bit of a wash, made sure it's nice and clean, and most importantly it needs to be dry. So that's my leather. You can also buy this at craft stores. I've also salvaged leather from, I had an old handbag that I was throwing away because it was broken, an old pair of like knee-high boots, anywhere where you can get a big piece of leather that is at least as big or preferably a bit bigger than the soles of the shoes that you're planning to do. Okay, so we've cleaned our shoes. We've got our piece of paper here. And the final little safety tip is this glue is not good for you. So please make sure that you either do it outside if possible. Unfortunately, it's raining here today, so I can't go outside, but I am standing right next to an open window. Really important that you have somewhere with good ventilation. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do now is to get our leather, roll it out, and we need to trace our shoes. So for dancing, we actually want the suede side to be the side that we are going to have against the ground. And the reason for that is suede is great for dancing. It has just a little bit of grip, but it is actually going to allow you to still sort of move very smoothly. These rubber soles, is going to really stick to the floor, so that's not ideal. So you want to put it the suede side down, and I'm going to put my shoes on top, and then I'm going to get my pen, and I'm just going to trace around. Now I'm going to keep it as close to the edge of the leather as I can because I don't want to waste any of this. And just going to draw around. Can be a little bit loose. You can see it's sticking a little bit outside of the edge of the shoe at the moment. That's okay because we're going to tidy it up later. And then I'm going to slot that one in there. Again, I don't want to waste any of this leather. Just trace around. Okay, so now I've got my rough outlines of the shoes. This is not super exact. That's okay because we're going to make that nice and neat later. So I've got my cutting mat or piece of cardboard if you don't have a cutting mat. And the next thing that I'm going to do is to cut this out. So you can use the scissors. I personally find this is a little bit hard. So I'm going to go in with my scalpel. Obviously this is sharp. Please be really careful. Mind your fingers. And you can see that's might take a couple of goes to get all the way through. And you can see that's sort of coming out. So I'm just going to keep on going with that, and then we'll come back when I have my pieces finished. All right. So that piece of leather, I can do at least another pair of shoes out of that, maybe two. So I'm going to put that to one side and keep on cutting. Okay, so now we have our two pieces of leather, which will roughly match our shoes. And as you can see, there's a little excess that sticks out the side, and that's good. That's going to make life easier when we come to stick it all together. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is start to add a layer of glue. This is when your piece of paper will come in handy because this glue, once it gets on things, it does not come off. If you've got rubber gloves, and that's a good idea to keep it off of your hands, keep it away from your skin as much as possible. Unfortunately, I don't have any today, so I'm just going to try and be as careful as I can to keep it away from my skin. So first thing, we're going to take our leather pieces, put them on our little piece of paper, and I'm going to open up my glue. Now again, you can buy this in tubes at most supermarkets. You don't have to get a big tub like I have here. And you can see that's the texture. It's this kind of gloopy stuff. It is got quite a smell. So just definitely make sure that you're somewhere with a bit of ventilation. Now I've got something to spread. This is like an old piece of credit card, but you could also use like a popsicle stick, anything that will allow you to spread the glue. And you want a smooth, thin layer. So something like this, which has got a bit of flexibility, works quite well. And what you don't want is chunks of glue. You want this to be as evenly spread as you can. Might a little bit more. And again, as I said, try to be really careful to keep it off of your skin as much as you can because it will get very messy and it's really not great for you. So I'm just spreading that out as thinly and as evenly as I can. And you want to go right to the edges. I'm just going to make sure I haven't missed any bits. Looks like a little bit there and a little bit there. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to keep on going and do the other side. Okay, so that's looking pretty good for my base. So the next thing now is I need to do the same on the bottom of the shoes. I'm just going to grab another piece of paper to make sure that I don't end up cross-contaminating everything. Move those to one side. Okay, so now we've got our shoes, and we're going to do the same with the shoes. Again, we want a thin, even coating. Where you can, try to avoid going up the side of the shoe because you will be able to see this glue. So just try to be a little careful, take your time and do it as neatly as you possibly can. And you do want to make sure you're going right to the edge, because the edges is where it's most likely for our DIY soles to start to peel from. Okay, so that one is done. I'm just going to use a clean piece and just try to make sure that that is nice and smooth and that there's no excess. Okay, so that's looking good. We're going to leave that, very important, face upwards, because as soon as you put it down on something, it's going to stick. And then we're just going to do our final shoe. Okay, so same again, taking my little clean piece, just giving it a little scrape, making sure it's nice and even. Okay, so that's looking good. All right, so we should now have both shoes with a nice thin, even coating of glue. Leave those facing upwards to dry. And we've got the same with our leather pieces. So what you want to do is to let that set for maybe about 15-20 minutes until it gets tacky. Have a look at the instructions on your particular brand of glue. This one says 20 minutes. They will vary a little bit, and it will vary depending on the heat of the day. But what you want is for it to be fairly dry to the touch, so not wet, but is a little bit sort of tacky. This one's actually probably fairly close, but these shoes are going to need a little bit longer. So I'm going to come back in a few minutes and test them, and then we'll show you the next step. So it's been about 10 minutes. I've come back and now I can feel that this is tacky. So it's not like wet to the touch, and same here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out which piece goes with which. Whoops. And that's the wrong side, so I need the other one. And then what I'm going to do is line this up as well as I can. It's a little bit off, but that's okay. And then I'm going to push hard. So what you want to do is make sure that there's as good a contact as you possibly can all across the sole. One thing you can do is get something like a shoehorn or a spoon and rub. And what we're trying to do is make sure there's no air bubbles, that there's a really good contact between the shoe and the leather. The other shoe. Word of warning, don't let it get too dry before you try to stick the two pieces together. Like if you get distracted and you come back in an hour and a half, you'll probably find the glue is completely cured and it just won't work. So try not to leave it, and I would recommend setting a timer just so that you don't forget. Okay, so I'm going to spend a few minutes buffing this, squishing it, making it as secure a connection between the two as I possibly can, and then I'm going to come back and show you how we trim up and finish the job. Okay, so I'm back. I've let this glue set for an hour or so, just to make sure it's really well bonded on, and now the last thing we need to do is just to trim off this excess. So I've got a sharp scalpel. You could also use a craft knife or anything else that's got like a nice sharp blade. Obviously be super careful with your fingers. And all we're going to do is cut as close as we can to the edge of the shoe so that we can remove any of the excess leather that sticks out. So you can see we're just sort of cutting it away. What you might find is easiest just to cut most of it away and then go back and sort of tidy up any little bits that you've missed. But essentially you want to make sure that it's got a nice flush finish, because if there's any bits that stick out, then they can get sort of caught, and you know, that's where they'll start to peel off if you're not sort of, you know, pretty precise with this. You can see that we're getting a nice clean finish there. All right, I'm just going to keep on trucking with this. I'm going to keep on going with this, make sure I've got all of the excess trimmed off, and we'll end up with a nice finished shoe. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. There's a couple of bits here that are a bit rough still, so I'm just going to tidy that up. And that's now looking pretty good. Just run your finger over, make sure that any of those edges are kind of nicely stuck down. And that is good to go. I'm just going to do the other shoe now and then we'll be finished. All right, and that looks pretty good. So now we have our beautiful suede shoes. They're going to be fantastic for dancing on a wooden floor or any sort of nice dance floor surface. And you can see that that was, you know, maybe half an hour all up of work and saved easily $70. So give it a try. If you've got any questions, let me know. But otherwise, happy crafting.